Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about senior and junior and getting there. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how long do you think it would take for one to go from junior to a senior developer? Well, this is tricky for me to answer because it depends on what you mean by a senior. Because the thing that this is sometimes tricky to understand for a lot of people, but when we talk about senior, there is there's a nuance to what we mean by senior. A lot of people will say you are a senior if you have X amount of years on your CV, and that's where they draw the line. If you ask the next person, they are going to say that it only applies if you know enough about certain tools or things or so forth, because it can be contextual as well. Just because you're a senior, for example, in one area doesn't necessarily mean that you're a senior in a different area. And then you have the people like myself who go and say basically that you don't apply, in my opinion, to be called senior until I can trust that your understanding of basically everything related to the development process is at a level where you can lead each of the area, to basically take responsibility for the delivery of the entire project. That doesn't mean that you're a full stack developer. It means that you know every part of the process to the point where you can basically guarantee that if you are part of this project, it will succeed, or rather it will meet the criteria and it will scale and like it will do all these sorts of things. Because in my book, that's the definition of being a senior. It's as I like to say, it's an insurance policy for success, basically. It's the same thing as hiring a general, for example, or a CEO or someone like that, someone who basically is ultimately in charge of actually making the thing happen. But that's not what, as I was saying, that's not what, say, a consultancy is gonna call a senior. They're gonna slap senior on anybody that sort of applies, and a lot of people do that on their CV all the time. So if we talk about how long it would take you in years, I will tell you that the average time the range usually is around 5 years flat. That's what I'm just going to tell you. The average before you see the title senior start creeping in on CVs at around 4 or 5-ish years, something like that, and anything above that can be considered senior. And so that's how long it's going to take you to, in essence, fairly confidently be able to put that on your CV. Now, as I said, the problem is that that's just an indicator of the thing that people actually are referring to, which is skill, which is what this thing is supposed to be about. Who cares if you've been coding for 5 years if the only thing you've been doing is some HTML? Then you're a senior of maybe HTML. I used to work with a guy who didn't know, like he's a senior web developer, or like a webmaster. That's, I think, that the term he was using. The only thing he knew about web was how to use Dreamweaver. He didn't actually even know what HTML did. Like, he just dragged and dropped things. So the term senior, sure, he might be a senior in using Dreamweaver at most, but he's not a senior web developer or like webmaster, depending on how you define it, right? And so that's the thing that is going to be more interesting to you to hear about, I think. And here is where I'm going to scare you a little bit. You may never get there, depending on who you ask. And the reason why is because IT is full of people. And as I said, everybody has their own idea of what seniority really means. And frankly, you're never going to be able to meet all the criteria that someone might put on you. As I've said, like, my criteria that I consider to be fairly, let's just say strict in comparison to what most would use, is probably not the strictest around. There are probably people who would like look at my criteria and say, yeah, no, actually, yeah, maybe that, but also this stuff over here and all this stuff that I'm not ignorant on, because it's my values are just a reflection of my value system, right? I try to be objective and like all of that good stuff that we all tell ourselves, so everybody tries, I suppose. But ultimately, it comes down to your you can't really judge. You can't judge accurately without injecting some of your own values in the judgment. And so what some companies do is that they gather a group of seniors or more experienced people and try to make some type of profile of a person and so forth. And it's always going to be an estimate. And so if you go to that company where they might have super strict people or people who really say, oh, senior is anybody who knows all of this stuff, plus all of this stuff, plus all of this stuff, and you don't know most of that stuff, well, then you're not going to be a senior. And then you go to the next company and they don't have all those advanced super developers. They have some basic product managers or people like that, and then you know enough about this one stack that they are using, and that impresses them because they don't have anybody who really knows this stuff, and now you're a senior in their company. That's why it's very difficult to say how long it's going to take you to be a senior. But as I said, base requirements is around 4 or 5 years ish, and then we can talk about my favorite topic, which is okay, how long are you going to get? It's going to take you to get to the sort of levels where there is very little chance that anybody's not going to concede you, where you're basically considered. I would say that you are, if you pass my bar, which is of course what everybody says, I suspect that you would be fairly safe in saying senior in basically any company. I don't think that there will be a company that does not consider you to be a senior level experience, because as I said, the thing that is interesting to a company is not that you have senior on your name, it is the results that you bring. That label senior is just an indicator to this person is good. That's it. And the more quote-unquote senior you are, the more expectations you usually have on you. And at the highest levels of software development, you basically need to know the entire ecosystem to a point where you can, at large, nobody knows everything, but you should know enough that you can lead teams, plural if necessary. You can set up entire processes for people who may not really know how to do software development or anything like that. You can basically run the show, and you can do so in a sustainable way, and you can do so but while like delivering on all the results and all of this sort of stuff that is necessary. You're basically not limited by knowledge really, because you can make basically anything work. That level of autonomy and like multi-talent, or being able to actually produce all the results within whatever area it might be, that's the level when you are usually an architect, or like it doesn't have to be an architect, but I hope that you sort of get my drift. You've been around the block for long enough that basically every single IT company, like they can't really throw anything at you that you don't understand. And that's my point. That's what that's what I would say, that I think that it's a clumsy way of saying what most people at the higher levels will define as senior. Your level of understanding of system design, system knowledge, like ops, front end, back end, like you name it. Like you're not going to know all of it, but you know it to a degree that you can basically work in any company within any role. That is with a few exceptions. Like I've never met a senior back-end person who knew anything about front-end, for example, and vice versa, but at large you know enough about everything related to your to the software development process that you're not you don't really have to go and ask people for help with the coding or how to set things up or how to get things done. You might need to ask for help related to domain things or documentation, like where specific things are, but on average you're basically the person who can run the entire show. You usually provide support to other people. You don't really need support in the same fashion for these basic things that maybe a mid-level or like a regular person, say a junior or something like that, might need. So what I want you to take away from this is that senior, you can be a senior in around 5 years statistically. Well, that's what usually people use. I've seen people throw out senior after 2 years or 3 years as well, so you can use it basically whenever you want. It usually is just an indicator for a lot of people, like you have worked a few years and you can sort of code, right? But it depends on, it's contextual as well. If you go to one company, they're going to laugh you out of the room if you say that you're a senior, because the problem is that they measure you by your value or like your skills. They don't measure you by years, and they consider your skills to be subpar, and so their definition of a senior is higher than what you provide. So there you're going to stand there like a laughing stock. And in the next company, they don't have so many skilled, super opinionated, PhD, awesome, mega, super developers who know everything. And they're going to think that you are a senior because their understanding of seniority is much lower, like their requirements for that term is lower. If you want to be on the safest side, you're basically looking at becoming a software developer, as I said, what I like to refer to as a true senior. A true senior is an individual who can basically run the entire show. You can put them in basically any team, any department, and almost any role within, of course, not, within reason, and they will swim, or they will survive, they will make things happen, they will be able to handle basically any system, regardless of what it is, because they have so much experience that even if they don't know exactly this stack, they can figure it out without any problems, usually. That is what true seniority is about. You can design the entire system, or you can help out with the designing of the system, and you can run all the services. And you're basically you're a one-person army, not one woman or one man army type of deal, with the experience to come with it, so you can actually make all of these technical decisions on behalf of whoever might need it. And to answer how long it takes to get there, I can say to you that you're looking at that basically comes down to talent. You can get there in 5 years. It's more likely that you're going to get there in 10 years if you really apply yourself. And a lot of people, guys and girls, never get there, because getting to that level of seniority is not something that just happens by you just doing the daily grind. It's actually the people who usually get to that point have a lifestyle or a genuine interest, or have multiple roles and diversity. Like, it's not like guys, I've worked with people who have been working for 20 years who I would say do not pass that bar. Like, they are at best mid-level developers, and they're probably never going to get further than that, because the way that their priorities lie, or call it whatever you want, it's not something that they're aiming to become. And that's fine, because they're still going to be able to call themselves senior. Maybe not for every role, for every company, but for enough that it's not going to matter so much to them. And the only people who really become, as I said, true seniors, and the only times that matters, is, as I said, if you really want to be 100% sure that you basically get practically every job for any role that you apply for. And at the end of the day, the question is if that really matters. As I said, usually it's only the truly passionate, people or very talented people who get to that level. And honestly, I don't know if that makes much of a difference at the end of the day. You can think of it as if you get to 10 years of experience, you're a senior, you're not at that level, you're still going to be able to play in the same sandbox as the people who are at that level. You may not be at the same level of influence. You might, in these companies, they might have more authority or be a manager or something like that. But hey, guys, just as in sports, there are going to be players who are really, really good at the professional level, and then there are going to be people who are all-star, best of the best types of players at the same level. There's always a range of skill for everything that you do. So you don't have to become one of those people to just use the term senior. Have a great day.